As you know, Unitarian Universalism takes as its source spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions and instructs us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature.
And so, our pagan study group has practices such as calling the quarters. To create sacred space for rituals, we orient ourselves in the cardinal directions and cast a magic circle. To make ourselves more mindful of the compass points, we could call upon guardians or spirits of the four quarters and give attributions such as colors and the four classical elements of lighting the quarter candles: yellow for air in the east, red for fire in the south, blue for water in the west, and green for earth in the north.
Or the attributes could be ceremonial tools, which you may recognize from tarot cards. Air, east, as a dagger. Fire, south, as a wand. Water, west, as a cup. And earth, north, as pentacle.
Or the attributions could be from watching the sky, such as the time of day, the seasons, or the royal stars, a dominant star which would appear in its season, each having a time of year when most noticeable. At the summer solstice, it's the star Regulus, and Leo the lion, as the watcher in the north, while at the autumn equinox, it's the star Antares, and Scorpius the scorpion, as the watcher in the west.
Unitarian Universalism also embraces as a source the words and deeds of prophetic people who challenge us, confront powers and structures, challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and transforming power of love.
You might be interested to learn that the United States Mint has been issuing quarters in honor of prophetic women. The American Women Quarters Program is a series that celebrates the accomplishments of women who shaped our nation's history and paved the way for generations who followed.
Each quarter features a reverse design honoring women from ethnically, racially, and geographically diverse backgrounds, who made contributions in a variety of fields, including civil rights and government, abolition and suffrage, science and space exploration, humanities, and the arts.
In short, the Quarters program recognizes women who inspired change. Today, in Calling the Quarters, we attribute to the North the amazing achievements of Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, the Civil War-era surgeon, suspected spy, prisoner of war, a free thinker, and an advocate for women's rights and dress reform. She is the only woman to be awarded the Medal of Honor.
Mary Edwards Walker is born in Oswego, New York, in November 1832. Her parents have a farm there, but the Walkers are no ordinary family.
Those Walkers are a strange bunch. They allow the girls to wear bloomers, pants, instead of skirts and corsets. And even with all the farm work that needs to be done, they pile the kids into that schoolhouse Alva built instead of having them do chores.
It's true. Mary's parents are progressive. Her father, Alva, was a free thinker, and he raised his children to question the regulations and restrictions of various denominations. Alva was an admirer and believer in the teachings of the great agnostic Robert Ingersoll. At his eulogy, Alva Jr. said of his father,
"He never believed in a literal burning hell, as many of you have often heard him say that everyone would enjoy hereafter a place or condition of which their earthly life allotted them. And while we saw an outgrowth of ancient and modern religions of which his was largely tinctured, we saw in him a disposition to accept, advocate regardless of all creed, regardless of all isms, whatever in his judgment was right and true. And last, though by no means least, he was determined to maintain his individuality, synopsis of which would fill volumes of interesting reading. He never allowed others to do his thinking."
Well, book learning is fine for a boy, but educating their 5 girls is a waste of time. The only thing they need to learn is how to be good wives and mothers.
But I'm going to be a doctor.
Goodness, child. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Everybody knows there's no such thing as a lady doctor.
That was true then, but not for long. In 1849, Elizabeth Blackwell became the first American woman to earn a medical degree. Young Mary, determined to be a doctor herself, is thrilled by Blackwell's achievement.
Dr. Mary Edwards Walker. Doesn't that sound grand, Father?
It does indeed. But your mother and I can't afford to send you to medical school.
I know. That's why I'm going to start saving by teaching school and saving every penny.
It won't be easy, Mary. People will turn away from you, laugh at you, call you names.
Let them. I don't care what other people think. I'm going to be a doctor, and that's that.
Medical schools turn down her applications, but Mary keeps trying. Finally, she is accepted to Syracuse Medical College in New York. In December 1853, she begins her studies. She faces many obstacles, including jeers, pranks, and cold shoulders from male classmates and instructors. But one day...
Excuse me, miss. I'm one of your classmates, Albert Miller. I'd just like to say that I admire what you're doing. Ignore those bigots.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I do ignore them. If they want to be foolish, it doesn't bother me. I'm here to learn.
And learn she does. She earns her medical degree. In 1855, she becomes Dr. Mary Edward Walker at last. Following her graduation, she marries her fellow medical student, Albert Miller. But Walker stuns him, and even her own family, by showing up for her wedding day not in a traditional wedding dress, but instead in trousers and a long dress coat.
No, sir. My waist has never been confined in one of those steel traps of a corset. It is just as nature intended. It should be free and unconfined. The greatest sorrows from which women suffer are those physical, moral, and mental ones that are caused by their unhygienic manner of dressing. No man would be so cruel as to leave a heavy harness on his horse all night or all day. A woman in ordinary dress expends more vitality than a horse in his harness.
The marriage ceremony is conducted by a Unitarian minister, Samuel May. Mary insists on keeping her own last name, something very few women do at the time. She also refuses to agree to obey Albert in her wedding vows. Walker and Miller share a medical practice, but after a few years, her outspokenness and her insistence on wearing pants alienates the patients and her husband. Eventually, she and Miller separate after he is caught having several extramarital affairs.
He told me that if I would not get a bill of divorce, I could have the same privilege of infidelity. I could never live with a man who could make such a vile proposition to his wife.
In July 1861, the first major conflict of the American Civil War shocks both armies of the Union and the Confederacy with its fierce fighting and many casualties. Dr. Walker, then 28 years old, tries to sign up as a surgeon after the Battle of Bull Run and goes to Washington, D.C.
Ma'am, there's a war going on. I have no time for silly pranks.
This is no prank, sir. I am a doctor. How dare you waste my skills when thousands of wounded boys need medical attention?
Want to help? Do what other ladies are doing. Be a volunteer nurse.
So Walker spends the first years of the Civil War volunteering. She also earns another medical degree, but she keeps trying to get a commission as an Army surgeon. Frustrated by her inability, Walker takes the unprecedented step of writing her concerns directly to President Abraham Lincoln. She receives a personal reply from the White House in January 1864.
The medical department of the Army is an organized system in the hands of men supposed to be learned in that profession, and I'm sure it would injure the service for me. It would injure the service for me with strong hand to thrust among them any male or female against their consent. If they are willing for Dr. Mary Walker to have charge of a female ward, if there be one, I am so willing, but I'm sure that the controversy on the subject will not subserve the public interest.
However, in the winter of 1864 would overwhelm any opposition, because although the Union Army had broken the siege of Chattanooga, the tremendous victory came at a terrible price.
Ma'am, our men are torn up real bad, and the generals need every surgeon they can get in Tennessee. They'll even take you. Report to Assistant Surgeon General Wood in Louisville, Kentucky.
On March 14, 1864, Dr. Walker is assigned for duty to the 52nd Ohio Volunteer Infantry by order of General Thomas. The campaign begins on the Red River of Louisiana as part of an overall federal strategy to strike deep into the Confederacy. No one has time to care that one of the surgeons is a woman.
Dear family, you would not believe how awful it is here. Men are crowded together in the filthiest of conditions. Blood and mud are everywhere, and the tents offer little shelter. Doctors are so busy that few take the time to figure out the best treatment for each soldier. If he's wounded in the arm or leg, they just chop it off and go on to the next man. The sawed-off limbs are tossed in big piles to be taken away later. I disagree with this practice. I believe we could save most boys' limbs, but I seem to be in the minority in this way of thinking.
In April 1864, Walker is captured behind enemy lines.
You, halt!
I'm a doctor. Folks at the farm need medical attention.
That's what you say, ma'am. But you've ridden from the other Army side to ours way too often. You must be an undercover agent collecting intelligence for the North.
What? How dare you? Why, I have never gained information that led General Sherman to modify his strategic operations to save himself from a serious reverse and obtain success. Never. And I will not now let you take me prisoner on purpose, because if interrogated, I will prevent you from attacking by fully following my instructions of what to say about our Western Army.
I am both amused and disgusted at the sight of a thing that only the debased and depraved Yankee nation could produce. You will be confined in Castle Thunder on the charge of being a spy.
Walker is sent to prison in Richmond, Virginia, and conditions at Castle Thunder, a former tobacco warehouse, are brutal. The prison is overcrowded and filthy. Rats run across the floor, and mattresses are infested with vermin. Diseases such as dysentery and smallpox are rampant, and Mary suffers malnutrition from the maggot-filled food. But General Grant forbids prisoner exchange talks unless Confederate authorities agree to treat black soldiers the same as white.
Dear Diary, my room is tiny and airless, and guards often resort to violence. I have complained about the lack of grain and vegetables for the prisoners, and although the Confederates added wheat bread and cabbage to the rations, I have lost a significant amount of weight. But what is worse is my eyesight is failing, and I fear I shall no longer be able to practice medicine.
In August 1864, after 4 months of captivity, Walker is freed in a prisoner exchange. After recuperating, in October she is granted a commission as an acting assistant surgeon for the Army and serves the rest of the war tending female prisoners in Kentucky and at an orphan asylum in Tennessee. After the war ends, Mary is given a disability pension for muscular atrophy that she suffered while a POW. in Castle Thunder. And in November 1865, President Andrew Johnson presents Walker with the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for bravery.
Whereas it appears from the official reports that Dr. Mary E. Walker, a graduate of medicine, has rendered valuable service to the government, and her efforts have been in earnest and untiring in a variety of ways, and that she was assigned to duty and served as an assistant surgeon in charge of female prisoners at Louisville, Kentucky, among the recommendations of Major Generals Sherman and Thomas, and faithfully served as contract surgeon in the services of the United States, and devoted herself with much patriotic zeal to the sick and wounded soldiers, both in the field and in the hospital, to the detriment of her own health, and has endured hardships as a prisoner of war for 4 months in the Southern prison while acting as a contract surgeon. And whereas by reason of her not being a commissioned officer in the military service, a brevet or honorary rank cannot be, under the existing law, conferred upon her, and whereas the opinion of the President and honorable recognition of her service and suffering should be made, it is ordered that a testimonial thereof shall be made hereby and given to said Dr. Mary E. Walker, and that the usual Medal of Honor for meritorious service be given unto her. Okay. Now I can't do it at all. I can't do it with this hand. Yeah, let's do this.
She always wore her medal proudly, even after it was stripped from her and several others, including Buffalo Bill Cody, by government action in 1917. The Pentagon reversed its decision and reinstated her Medal of Honor in 1977. However, Mary remained controversial all her nonconformist life, for her style of clothing evolved from wearing a hat, from wearing a dress-covered pants to an all-out male suit complete with a top hat. In February 1870, with her bronze medal pinned to her frock coat, she is arrested in New Orleans.
Sacre bleu! Police! Stop!
Whatever is the matter, officer?
I am charging you with disturbing the peace.
How?
Your clothes! You are impersonating a man!
I don't wear men's clothes. I wear my own clothes. The time is coming when every woman will dress in this style, for the advantages are evident to be much longer overlooked.
No. Tell it to the judge.
I will. Sir, I have the right to dress as I please in free America, on whose tented fields I have served for 4 years in the cause of human freedom. I have worn this style of dress for many years, as many female medical students and practitioners have done. I wear this dress from high moral principle. The fashionable dress of the day is not such as any physiologist can defend. It is an abomination invented by the prostitutes of Paris, and as such unfit to be worn by a modest American woman. I wear trousers because this is a free country and people are not handicapped by customs.
Not surprisingly, Mary also fought for the women's right to vote. In 1871, Dr. Walker tries to register to vote but is denied. In 1912 and 1914, she testifies before the House of Representatives in support of women's suffrage.
Do I understand that your crowning constitutional argument is based upon the proposition that the Constitution of the United States guarantees to every state a republican form of government, and that as a corollary to that proposition, no state has a Republican form of government which denies suffrage to women? Is that your position?
That is the point. And here is another point in the Constitution of the United States. Any law that a state passes that is in conflict with the Constitution of the United States is null and void. And so if every state where there is not women's suffrage, so far as I know, there is nothing legal to debar women from exercising her rights.
You think, then, that there cannot be any Republican form of government in a state where woman is denied the privilege of voting?
Certainly, according to the Constitution of the United States.
But Mary is becoming increasingly distant from the mainstream fight for suffrage. People argue instead for a constitutional amendment to recognize women's right to vote. She publishes 2 books on her views of feminism and healthcare and travels the lecture circuit. However, she suffers a long illness after a fall on the steps of the Capitol building in 1917.
I have got to die before people will know who I am and what I have done. It is a shame that people who lead reforms in this world are not appreciated until after they are dead. And then the world pays its tributes. When I am buried neath the ground, wrap that flag my corpse around. Plant that flag over my grave, then let it wave, let it wave.
Dr. Walker dies in 1919 at the age of 86. Her death comes a year before the passage of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which guarantees women the right to vote. She is buried in a black suit beside her father at Rural Cemetery in Oswego, New York. After her funeral, Mary's close friend, Dr. Van Heusen, said,
Dr. Mary's life should stand out to remind us that when people do not think as we do not dress as we do, and do not live as we do, that they're more than likely to be half a century ahead of their time, and that we should have for them not ridicule, but reverence.
Next month, the United States Mint, the National Women's History Museum, and the Oswego, New York community will commemorate the release of the 2024 Dr. Mary Edward Walker Quarter. So, this summer, man or woman, put your hands in your pockets. Take some pocket change out of your pants and check to see if Mary is in the palm of your hand. Thank you for your attention.